Welcome to Wines We Drink, a podcast for wine lovers and learners. I'm Charlotte Norsworthy Varnum, and together with my counterpart Keith Herndon, we'll be exploring a new wine each week. Keith is a lover of wine, and I'm a learner of wine, and we hope you'll sip along with us. Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of Wines We Drink, our summer fun project where we celebrate all things wine. I'm Charlotte Varnum, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host Keith Herndon, a certified wine sommelier.
Hello, Charlotte. It's always just fantastically great to be in the wine kitchen with you as we record another episode featuring an outstanding wine.
It's been an amazing season so far, an amazing summer, and listeners, we're certainly turning the spotlight on a really great wine today.
Yeah, it really is a great wine. It has all of the elements, okay? It's a great varietal. It's from a great winery. The grapes are sourced from a great location. And that location is what inspired today's selection. I'm going to explain a bit of that later, but I think I used the word great a lot there, didn't I?
Yeah, it's going to be great. That's one guarantee for sure. So good teas, a great teas even. So you're right, Keith. We are in the midst of a double underline great season 5. And if you missed our previous episodes from this great season or any of our earlier seasons, you can find them on most of the major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We also have a complete episode guide at wineswedrink.com, and you can also follow us along the way throughout the season at The Wines We Drink on Instagram. So, Keith, are you ready to talk more about today's selection?
Yes, I'm excited about today's wine because of how it reflects a sense of place. And we talk about that, a lot on this show. And I'm doubly excited about this wine because of the connection we have with this place through one of the industry experts that we featured in our book, Wine Conversations, Exploring Meaning, Mystery, and Myth.
That's right. We're using that book this season, which was published earlier this year, as a foundation for all of our shows for season 5. And while today's wine is not mentioned directly in the book, it was certainly inspired by one of the interviews, like Keith said. So, Keith, could you please share the background story with everyone?
Sure. In our chapter on growing grapes, we featured an interview with Brene Royal, an African-American woman who was a trailblazing pioneer in the wine world, especially when it comes to vineyard operations. For 11 years of her career, she worked at the iconic Gallo-owned Monte Rosa vineyard in Sonoma Valley. She spoke so lovingly about this place and the wines that come from its vines. I knew that we had to feature a wine sourced from these grapes.
Wow. Well, listeners, now you know the place we're talking about, the Monte Rosa vineyards. Let's hear Brene herself tell us the varietal we're featuring today.
Go-to is going to be any Zinfandel. I had the opportunity to manage Monte Rosa's now 131-year-old vines, and Zinfandel is such a finicky variety to farm regardless of the trellis, and so I just love the versatility of it. It's my go-to, maybe isn't a specific brand, but with Zinfandel, I'm going to beeline for Zinfandel before anything else.
There you have it. Brene's go-to wine is Zinfandel, and that's what we're featuring today, a Zin sourced from the Monte Rosa vineyard.
At the time we interviewed Brene for the book, she had left Gallo and was the director of vineyard operations at Saint-Supri in Napa. But since then, she has established her own wine label called Violet's Paradise. And I'm eagerly awaiting my first shipment of her wines. She has sourced some excellent Zinfandel from the Monte Rosa vineyard. But it will not be released until later this year. So since we couldn't drink Brene's own Zin today, we had to come up with another plan, right? Okay.
Right.
And that wasn't hard to do, okay? Grapes from an iconic vineyard belong with the expertise of an iconic winery. And so when I was searching for this, I decided, okay, we're drinking a Zinfandel from the Robert Bialy winery with grapes sourced from Monte Rosa.
Okay, yes, an established label and grapes from an iconic vineyard, all inspired by a wine pioneer, I would say. I'm sold.
Well, the bottle we're drinking today is a 2021 vintage from Robert Bialy, and I chose it because I think it truly reflects the varietal in all of the best ways. Like Brene, I really enjoyed a glass of Zin, and when I tasted this one, I knew it was special. Also, this bottle reflects Brené's work there. When these grapes were harvested in September 2021, she was still the vineyard's ops manager at Monte Rosa.
Oh, that's fantastic. It's a time capsule.
Yeah. So as important as Brené is to our story, we also need to introduce Bob Bialy and the winemaker David Natali, who oversaw the fruit's hand harvest and an initial sorting in the vineyard and then again in the winery. Mm-hmm. So not only is the fruit from an iconic vineyard with a pioneering manager, as we talked about, they made sure that it was the best fruit.
Wow. I mean, whenever I hear these stories, I'm taken by the attention to detail that goes into the wines we drink. It's impressive.
Yeah, it was the craft of winemaking that drew me into this world. You know, I look at it as an art form, and I appreciate the grape growers and the winemakers as the artists they are. You know, especially when we're talking about a boutique product like today's wine. Mm-hmm. You know, so after these grapes were sorted twice, they were destemmed and fermented in open-top tanks. The wine underwent a malolactic fermentation, and it was aged in 100% French oak barrels, 35% of them new. You know, altogether, the wine aged for 14 months, which smoothed out its tannins and provided some really nice oaky characteristics. All in all, there's a lot going on in what went into this bottle.
You know, you've explained malolactic fermentation in previous episodes, but can you explain it again for any newbies out there? I could use a refresher too.
Yes, it's a bacterial process that converts the malic acid that's naturally in wine to lactic acid, which helps give the wine a creamier texture. It's the same lactic acid that is in milk. Think about that. Mm-hmm. But don't get that confused if you're milk sensitive to lactose. We're talking about lactic acid here and not the sugar lactose.
Right, what the acid does to the product. Thank you for that. So we toss out a lot of wine terms on this show, and so sometimes I think it's valuable for us to just pause and provide an explanation one more time. But I think we've got all the backstory, right? I'm ready to taste some wine.
Yes, I just put this in the decanter a little bit before we started recording today's show. About 30 minutes for a Zin like this is ample time to allow it to open up. So as I pour this wine into our glasses, I want you to tell our listeners what you're seeing. Mm-hmm. You know, how would you describe its color? So let me get our glasses over here, and I've got the decanter here, so I'm going to give it a nice pour.
Wow, look at that. I mean, immediately it's a deep red color. It's really a true ruby red. And that's my birthstone. So that I have a fan favorite for that color. There is a slight purplish hue to it. It's not, a bright red. It's more of a true ruby with a purple twinge.
Yeah, it has a great color. I love that ruby red of a Zin. So now let's go in for that first smell.
Yes, it's had plenty of time to unwind here.
Really
oh my gosh.
Wonderful. Right.
Those are some nice red fruit aromas that distinguish this wine, right? Mm-hmm. But there's just some juiciness that I get from some strawberry, maybe a hint of cherry.
With a dark wine like this, I'm getting at least one aroma I was expecting, blackberry, right? I'm also getting an aroma that most may not expect, right? It has a really complex nose. All of those fruits you picked up there, are there, but there's some oaky elements as well. Mm-hmm. There's some savory herbs and some cedar even coming through. So let's go in for that first taste. What flavors are you getting?
Okay, yeah. Wow. What a flavor explosion that is. I'm tasting black fruit, like you were saying. Blackberry, black currants. I'm still getting that hint of cherry. It kind of all carries over from the aromas into its taste.
Yeah, the winery's tasting notes describe that specifically as Bing cherry. And the notes also describe fresh fig as a flavor component. Huh. But one of the key elements that makes this wine so drinkable to me is what the notes describe as, quote, lively acidity, end quote.
Okay. I love that phrase. As I've continued sipping here, I can see what you mean about the acidity, and Even on the aromas front, there's some brightness to it, there's some freshness to it, and lively, I feel like, is the best way to describe it.
Yes, and that acidity leads us right into a beautiful finish. You know, the winemakers use the phrase supple tannins to describe the mouthfeel here. And that means that the tannins are soft and integrated into the wine in a way that doesn't create a harsher drying sensation.
That's exactly right. And this is the way a Zinfandel should be, in my opinion. I've had a few that were drying and somewhat bitter, and that's not the case here.
Yeah, and we're not going to talk about those.
Right.
Right? It's important for a Zin like this to have that nice, smooth finish. Today's wine has an alcohol by volume of 14.7%, but there aren't really any tasting effects from that. Certainly no alcohol burn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's almost a surprising number considering the experience. It's a fantastic representation of Zin from a great location, and I've enjoyed getting to know it a bit better as I planned the food pairing for today.
Yes, so it's time to welcome in your alter ego, Chef Charlotte. And please, as Chef Charlotte, tell our listeners about the food pairing that you have for this wine.
Well, thank you. The wine is so exquisite on its own, so you don't want to overthink the food you serve with it. You really want to choose something that allows this wine to be the star of the show while providing a memorable partner that can stand up in its ranks. So for me, the perfect pairing for this wine is a simple flank steak, but I'm dressing it up a bit with a tart cherry reduction.
Wow, that sounds delicious. So please get us some of this out of the bowl over here, and let's dig into a few bites and sips.
Yes, absolutely. By all means, here's a couple of portions here.
Okay, got the plate in front of me. Oh, wow, the steak is very tender.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, very tender. Okay, going in for that first bite. Oh, wow. Tender and juicy. It's a texture that, it's a wonderful compliment to this wine. I'm going to have that sip here.
Yes, please.
The soft tannins that we were just talking about, that's just that wonderful compliment to the texture. While there's an intensity to the beef flavor that you would expect, it doesn't overwhelm the fruitiness of the wine. And then with that tart cherry reduction that you added, this almost like a compote, right?
Right.
It really brings out that Bing cherry that you noticed earlier.
Adding that cherry reduction, I feel, is a way to complement, draw out those Bing cherries, like you were saying. They're really subtle in the wine, but in context, provide the right undertone for this reduction to really work as another flavor element in the pairing. By giving the cherries time to reduce in the wine we're drinking today as well, I also will throw out there that I incorporated some cherry and black peppercorn preserves in the reduction. I really feel all of that, along with the natural sugars from the cherries and the wine, provide their own subtle sweetness just to offset that tart that we get and that we expect from cherry. So it's a good contrast to the steak, right? The beefy and the fatty. So I feel it all comes together nice.
Yes, it does. And underneath that reduction, you have nicely seasoned the meat with a slight spiciness that accentuates the wine's fruit forwardness, right? If the seasoning and the reduction had been overly sweetened, it would not have worked, right? Just the opposite here. The fruity sweetness of the wine contrasts with the spicy seasoning and it all balances out the flavors, So well done, Chef Charlotte.
Thank you. It has been so much fun this season to take on this persona of Chef Charlotte and plan out these pairings. It's also been really fun to explore how to make meals more of an experience without the preparation feeling impossible, right? A simply prepared steak and the reduction came together in 30 minutes, right? So even though it doesn't necessarily feel like a weeknight meal, it technically ticks all the boxes if you're willing to have a fancier cut of meat. But so that's just a reminder to our listeners that you can have some fun in the kitchen and you can make magic out of the everyday.
Well, you certainly created some magic with this flank steak. I'll say that, right?
Oh, thank you again. So now I believe it's time to share with our readers some pricing information about today's bottle of Robert Bialy 2021 Zinfandel from the Monte Rosa Vineyard.
Charlotte, I hope our listeners have come to appreciate what a special bottle of wine this is. especially when I say that the average price on the Vivino app is $75.
Okay.
It's another one of our splurge wines this season, but this is a wine worthy of every penny. You know, we talk a lot about quality to price ratio, and if you're going to pay up, you really want to get that quality, and this one certainly delivers. You know, I paid just under the average price for this one, and there are no regrets. It's among the top 5% of wines in the world on the Vivino app. Wine enthusiasts really enthused about this wine. They scored it 96 points based on a blind tasting that they did for this vintage just back in March.
Oh,
so
wow.
a very current
review.
rating. Yeah. So
that's amazing. A very impressive selection. Are we lucky to get this bottle at any price, right?
Well, yes. Thanks for reminding me to mention that, right? There were only 208 cases of this vintage produced, right?
Limited edition.
Right. But don't get too hung up on the vintage if you can't find the 2021. The 2022 and the 2023 are showing really well. I mean, if you look at the ratings across nearly 2 decades of Robert Bialy making this wine out of this vineyard, you get an average of 93 points.
Wow.
Right? So snag any Robert Bialy Monte Rosa vineyard Zinfandel, and you can't go wrong, right? You'll be happy with your purchase. You can also do a bit of homework, I think, and find many other winemakers out there that source their grapes from this wonderful place, you know, and you'll be able to find another label also that would have grapes sourced from this vineyard that may come in at a different price point.
That's great advice, and again, a very exciting opportunity to think about what those special moments are that are coming up that you might want to have this bottle featured. Or you can also wait until the fall when Brene Worrell releases her Zin of her own from this vineyard. Her label is Violet's Paradise. I'm so excited to try that when it comes around.
Yeah, I've already placed my pre-order, so it'll be coming. You know, so one idea, though, is just get them both.
There
right?
you go. Right,
you know, right. We're going to take a short break.
Throw caution to the wind.
Yeah, we're going to take a short break here, and when we return, I'll be talking more about the Monte Rosa Vineyard and its old vines.
While we take this break, I'm going to have some more sips of this Zin and bites of flank steak.
Well, I'm going to race you to the flank steak that's left, you know. All right. We'll be back shortly, listeners.
Welcome back to Wines We Drink. This is the portion of the show we call The Finish. Today, Keith is going to talk more about his special location we featured today, the Monte Rosa Vineyard.
Well, I think the best way to open this section of the show is to read a passage from the Robert Bialy website where they wax poetically about this vineyard. You ready for me?
I'm ready.
Okay, so
Get my
here goes.
bongos out.
Yeah, so here goes. Okay, this is a quote from the Robert Bialy website. "There's nothing quite like it. Huge, twisting, gnarled, mountain-rooted Zinfandel vines with the view of Sonoma Valley, San Francisco, and the Bay Area. Thriving plants that are still producing thrilling wines since their origins in the 1880s. Even the most jaded wine veterans are struck with awe upon seeing the great Monte Rosa vineyard."
Wow. Twisting and gnarled. Those words are certainly painting a picture of those old vines.
Yeah, yes, they do. And these, you know, I just love wines from old vines, okay?
Yeah.
But the reality of old vines may be more rooted in our romantic notion of them rather than any science, right?
Right.
In our book's chapter on explaining wine science, I asked Dr. Justine Vandenhovel, the viticulture at Cornell University, directly about this, okay? You know, is there science that supports the idea that the lower yields we get from old vines, does that result in more robust flavor, right? She did not know of any data to back up that notion,
Okay.
right? She said old vines are probably more resilient, probably have larger root structures, and that allows them to withstand more stress. but none of that really backs up the idea of improved composition of their fruit, right?
Okay, I mean, fair enough. Once again, though, science leaves us only with the romance, and that's plenty for me.
Yeah. But isn't that what we love about wine after all,
Exactly.
right? It's the romance, And I'm going to read the Robb report when I was putting together the ideas for these scripts. I was reading an article in the Robb report, and it had a recent article on old vines that contained this sentence, quote, "One thing that everyone can agree on is that old vines improve the flavor and complexity of wine," end quote. So let's just go with that, right?
That's fair.
Hard to argue with what was in today's bottle.
Right, exactly. And if he says everyone can agree on it, then who am I to disagree, especially given the evidence in front of me? But it is fascinating that many of the vines from Monte Rosso are more than 130 years old. It's incredible.
Yeah, yes, and they are that old and still producing grapes. Let's go back to the Robert Bielli website for a moment. I want to read another passage, okay? Quote, "Try visualizing those pioneering laborers digging into a remote California mountainside simply in order to grow delicious wine. To Bielli, Monte Rosso is a national treasure, and we are proud to be one of the fortunate winemakers to craft from this rare repository some of America's most historic grapevines. Long live Monte Rosso," end quote.
Oh, yeah, indeed. Long live Monte Rosso. That's amazing. And I love the approach to gratitude that they have for getting to produce wine of this caliber. Thanks to your interview with Brene, Wines We Drink has its own connection to that wonderful place.
Yes, a big shout out to Brene for her time and contribution to our book. If you'd like to read her full interview along with Dr. Vanden Heuvel and 14 other expert interviews, you can buy Wine Conversations on Amazon or through our local distributor, Neighborhood Books. You can find the purchase links at wineswedrink.com. And I'm going to toss out another, we don't talk about it every time we mention the book, but we did win a silver award in the Nonfiction Book Award. So, it's got some critical acclaim to it.
There you go. It is award-winning officially. And as we have throughout this 5th season, we are dipping into the book again next week with our featured wine. And this time the wine is mentioned and discussed directly in those pages.
Yes, we're featuring a wonderful wine from a self-made, very enterprising French winemaker.
Ooh, that's a good setup. I'm looking forward to sharing his story and drinking his fantastic wine. Until next week, everyone, cheers.
Yes, thanks everyone. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to Wines We Drink. Listen to our other episodes anywhere you get your podcasts, and be sure to follow us on Instagram at The Wines We Drink, and check out our episode guides at wineswedrink.com. Cheers.